So I was born in Parramatta Hospital in the late 60s, and I was a middle child in a relatively middle-class family. My parents built their house on my great auntie's tennis court, and they were there all of my life. Dad's still there. My dad's mum lived up the road 5 minutes that way. My mum's mum lived up the road 10 minutes that way, and all my cousins lived around the corner. And on Tuesday nights, we went to Nana's for roast lamb every Tuesday. On Sundays, we went to Auntie's for roast dinner, quite formal occasion. And on Thursdays, clad in our pyjamas, we went to the bistro at Maryland's RSL, where my nan was the head cook. I describe my childhood as involved. I was a competitive swimmer and did training. I did ballet, tap and jazz. I did elocution lessons, chess club. I did hockey, I did cricket. And after swimming on Friday nights, we would drive down to Coaldale Beach where we did nippers every Sunday in summer. My home was Christian, and I attended a Methodist ladies' college. And we always went to church. My mum was one of those people that even on holidays would seek out the nearest local church, and we would be marched into it. My parents' church was very formal, so I equated Christianity with reverence and tradition. It was the sort of church where you had to kneel at those wooden pews, curtsy when you go into an aisle. You had to sing formal hymns. You had those smelly herbs that they waved around. You had to be quiet. You had to dress properly. And I'm sorry, Lord, at times I found it a bit boring. The Sunday school was really traditional. We did colouring in and craft, largely to do with Bible stories. So I really got a great knowledge of the Old Testament Bible stories, and I did enjoy the singing. I still remember all those songs, All Things Bright and Beautiful, I'm in the Lord's Army, Only a Boy Named David, those sorts of things. I was christened as a baby, and my 2-year-old brother got drunk at my christening, sipping everybody's pink champagne as he went around the party. At the age of 12, I was confirmed, and that's a photo of my confirmation there on that slide, where a group of us did that tradition. To get money, I became a bell ringer. And back in those days, the Reverend would have smorgasbord weddings, I'd call them, with 6 to 7 weddings every Saturday, and we got $5 a wedding, so I could make quite a bit of dosh. The only trouble with the smorgasbord system was that if the bride was late, she was actually told to come back at the end of the day. And in between weddings, I learnt to play 500. I know, not very Christian, but I did. I still love the game to this very day. But we always found it frustrating because we had to throw our hand in if the bride was coming out, even if it was a good one. Every school holidays, my parents sent me away to a Christian camp called Teen Ranch, and that was down at Cobbitty. And I loved it because it had horse riding and had all those beautiful activities that you do. In the photo is the big dam where we used to swim and do diving competitions and play King of the Pier and all that sort of thing. It was here at Teen Ranch I heard a very different side to Christianity than I had realised, that you could have a personal relationship with your God. And I had really inspirational leaders that nurtured me. And at the age of about 16, I gave my life to Jesus. And at first, I was on fire for God. I went to Bible studies. I became a leader myself at the camp. I attended a Borkham Hills Baptist Church and later a Foursquare Gospel Church, and I even started lecturing my parents on Christianity. But then it all changed, and I'm not sure why it happened, but I slowly drifted away from God. So these are some of the more flattering photos of my 20s, so you get a gist of the sort of life I was leading at this time. I've thought about deeply why I did this period in my life. Maybe my ultra-strict upbringing, when I finally got that freedom, I went a bit crazier than usual. I've thought about my love language, and my love language is actually quality time and touch. Yet my parents never met that love language. Despite the privileged upbringing I had, their love language was gifting. So I often felt unloved, and I think I went and sought love in the wrong places. In the Sowing of the Seed passage, you read about that having to have deep roots, and I wonder if my roots were deep enough. You also read about those distractions and the weeds that sort of tangle up and take over your life, and perhaps that was the case. And sometimes I just think when you're on fire for God, the devil just attacks and he comes to get you. But whatever the reason, I spent more than a good decade away from God. And unfortunately, the consequences of sin are not good. Just going to take a break. So, I'm not proud of the things I did in that period, and I can't erase them or make them go away. And when Troy asked me to prepare for this, I actually wasn't sure I could or should do this story. But then, God reminded me that sometimes your greatest life message comes out of your greatest pain. And as I was writing this testimony, no word of a lie, a little wattle bird appeared at my window, and he started getting the bits of lily-pilly, and he started building a nest. And he did that the whole time I was writing. And if you don't know about me, I have a special connection with birds. God uses them to give me messages all the time. And today he was telling me that this is a new season and that he is here with me, present today, and that we can do this together because out of pain comes purpose. So over the years, I've learned God brings the unusual into your life to get your attention, like the two beautiful white ducks that appeared on my dad's lawn the day my mother passed away. Or the blue wren that you see in the picture that kept tapping on my window every time I got a job rejection last year, telling me something better was on the way. So I step forward in faith today and I share my story, hoping that I might touch one of you. I am not going to disclose much about those years in the wilderness, as that's a period of darkness that causes pain. But I will tell you I wasn't in a good place. I'd lowered my values and morals. I had a series of abusive relationships. I was drinking excessively. I'd hurt my parents several times. And I now was living in fear alone with a truncheon next to my bed. The week before I found God again, my car had been smeared with human feces. Expletives have been written all over my wall, and I'd lost complete faith in the AVO system. On that night, I entered my house. I felt that sixth sense of danger, and I noticed that the bathroom window had been broken. So I called the police, and 2 officers came and they searched my house top to bottom. But you know when you get that sense and that prompting? I begged them if they could search again. They found my perpetrator curled up in my bedroom cupboard, and I know God saved my life that night. As I sat in my backyard bawling that night, I cried out to God and I said, I can't do life like this anymore. I'm really sorry for my sins and I want to return to you. And I felt this calm and peace as God literally put me down. I believe God had been carrying me for the last 10 to 15 years. It's like that footstep story. What I did over those years, I could and should have had far worse consequences than I did end up with. And so I acknowledged that God had been good to me, and I declared that I was ready to walk on my own 2 feet again. So gradually, I started making changes. I gave up the cigarettes. I returned to the church. I started praying. I started spending time with God. And his closeness and love have never disappointed. God began connecting with me and speaking with me in different ways, including through dreams. There was this one dream where I was driving my old EJ Holden car through my suburb, and I had my hand out the window, and on my hand were 10 slabs of ice, and they were dripping away. And I woke up, I had no idea what it meant. So I asked God if he could reveal what that dream meant. And the next day, at 2:01 a.m. in the morning, I had this booming sound in my head, the 10 Commandments. And I came downstairs and I opened my Bible up at Exodus chapter 20, verse 1, where God had actually spoken the 10 Commandments. And God was telling me that unless I turned my life around, that I was going to drip away and my life was going to be lost forever. So that's what I've been trying to do ever since. Hebrews 12 verse 1 says, "In a cloud of witnesses, cast aside all that hinders you and race the race that God set before you." Oh, it's that one, sorry. I have a fair way to go, but I focus on putting one foot in front of the other. Psalm 9:10, one of the Psalms that I've recently discovered, said, "Those who know his name and have experienced his mercy put their trust in him, as he does not abandon those who seek him." I've learnt that the more you seek God, the closer you are with him and the more you hear his voice. In another dream, God showed me this glittering cave. It had all jewels and the most exquisite thing you've ever seen. And again, I heard a loud booming word in my head, supplication. I know that dream came from God because I had to look up the word in the dictionary the next day. God promised if I obeyed, he would bless me, and he gave me a second chance. As most of you know, I have a beautiful husband, Peter. I have 2 gorgeous children, Ilis and Lachlan. I have an incredible home, and I have a new privileged job leading numeracy in schools, disadvantaged schools all around New South Wales. I have the love of very many family and friends. But more than that, I have a relationship with God. I feel his presence. I love discovering his riddles and revelations. I adore creation, and I see miracles every day. I have learnt that God reveals things to those who hunger for him. I know what life is like without him and with him, and I don't want to depart again. This year, at the beginning of the year, we did the Armour of God series, and I actually reflected on how far I had come and how good God had been in restoring me and giving me favour. If you are part of River Gum's women's Facebook group, you will notice that I post a lot of posts, including some during this time. This series was really special for me because a few years earlier, I had discovered this passage myself in the Bible, and literally, I do my morning declaration putting on this armour. I actually go through the sequence of putting it on. See, I couldn't do life if I don't realise I'm saved. And every day I have to take up that shield of faith, and I actively have to put it in place because I still have many temptations and many addictions that I still have to overcome. I know my feet are supposed to bring good news and encouragement, and I actively read God's word every day. And that sword that has become part of my life has stopped me from having anxiety, has stopped me from returning to panic attacks, and has saved me from many of my enemies. This year, I'm aiming for my New Year's resolution to do the daily double. I already do a morning devotion every morning, which I absolutely treasure that time with God, but I actually am trying to put in another time of the day to give God gratitude, confess, and to do prayer. In my Connect group, We are studying the book of Psalms for our first term, and I've actually started looking at those and love all the powerful messages and discoveries I'm getting out of them. You're welcome to join us on Friday fortnights if that interests you. But God has basically told me for my New Year's resolution, it's time to rise up. And he's not telling me individually, he's actually telling us as a church, it's time for us to rise up. We need to encourage others and to share our stories like this so that we can grow stronger together. God has often placed people in my life for me to help them or them to help me. But healing and hurt can never be done without God. Some of my dearest friends and my closest family are still not on God's team. And this is the year I hope that God changes their heart. 2020 has taught me to slow down and appreciate the moments. It's taught me to reprioritise what's important. For me, I can't lie, it was a great year. I walked new and wonderful places. God comforted me and filled me with joy. I navigated new technology that I thought I never could handle. I spent more time with the family. I appreciated more sunrises and sunsets. I started a Happy Seed app and a gratitude diary, and I felt totally blessed, especially living here in Australia. The only regret is the COVID kilos, and unfortunately I have a few of those. God promises to change us from the inside out. Like a little grain of sand gets into an oyster and changes that over time. I use that example as my name Gretl actually means a shining pearl. And I hold on to God's promises like Jeremiah 29:11, that God has plans for us and all those plans are good. He has plans that allow us to prosper, to not harm us, to give us a hope and a future. Sometimes having the courage to do something different or the courage to go through those new doors is hard. And I actually struggle with giving up control a lot. But I am evidence that when you let God take your yoke and learn from him, you will find rest for your soul, and the world can be a much brighter place. I have changed from a pessimist to an optimist, from a life of pain to one of joy. I've learnt to count my blessings, and I'm grateful for the trillions of experiences, the serendipity coincidences, the daily occurrences that happen right before us every day that we often take for granted. Those that know me know that I am born on the day of the wanderer, and I do that literally, lots and lots. And I do that mentally. So calming my soul and actually getting me to be still is quite difficult. God still wakes me up in the early hours of the morning with messages. And I sometimes think that's the only time he can get my attention. But I've learnt when this happens to wake up, come downstairs and spend time with God, as in those moments in the early hours of the morning is when I hear from him most. My dad still enjoys his church at Parramatta, and he is now treasurer, which is handy for me because now I have a car spot at Parramatta. Dad's got 3 forms of cancer, but God has been kind in slowing the growth of those, so I savour my time with him and try to make up for those formative years. Our mission partner here at Rivergum, Empart, actually prayed for my dad 5 years back, which I believe was when the cancer stopped in its tracks. They actually rang us, Rivergum, to thank us for our donations and said, by the way, I think I need to pray for your father. I think at times we don't take the power of prayer seriously enough. And this year, I would like to try and do prayer as a greater discipline. My mum tried all her life to get her family to come to church. And I thought it was very fitting that just a couple of days after she passed away, Ilis got baptised here at Rivergum. Because everyone had come to my mum's funeral from far and field, they were all here, so they thought they might as well come to Ilis's baptism, and Mum got her final wish. As Ilis was dunked in the water that day, an amazing double rainbow appeared outside of the church. Sorry, I couldn't find the original photo, but the doors were open and everyone saw it. My mother saw Jesus at her feet the day she passed away. It was the last thing she shared with me. She said he appeared glowing white, and he had said, "I've come to take you home." Wouldn't that be nice if that we left this earth with an invitation from Jesus to take us home? As a parent, we want to bring up our children with Christian values. And we want to plant those seeds and hope that they will follow. Sort of like when you put an arrow out like that and you hope it hits the bullseye. River Gum has played a huge role in shaping my children, who they are and who they have become. We attended for 16 years. My kids still go to youth group here on Friday nights. They love their camps at Stanwell Park, which many of you have supported. They have loved people's encouragement of their talents over the years, and they have loved Doris's birthday cards. They are growing stronger and closer to God every day, and I pray that that continues. I pray that they find Christian husbands and wives to be with them. And most of all, I pray that their roots are a lot deeper than mine were, and that they don't depart from their relationship with Christ, that they don't have to navigate a life without meaning or regret. I am not perfect. I have a very, very long way to go. I still have my demons. But I have learned a valuable lesson that has brought me closer to God. And my life verse, which is Philippians 1 verse 6, says, "He who began a good work in me will continue it until the day that Jesus Christ returns." I'd like to finish with River Gum's foundational psalm, Psalm 1, verses 1 to 3. "Blessed is he that does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the pathway of sinners, nor sit in the seat of mockers. But on his word he meditates night and day. For he is like a tree planted by the river, who has fruit in season. His leaves do not wither, and all he does prospers." So I will continue to worship and serve an awe-inspiring God, and I hope you will do likewise. Thank you.